The article that I chose focused on habits that cause bad health. Mainly, the article that I found looked into the increased likelihood of that a person may take part in multiple unhealthy habits given their qualifications or lack of qualifications. And those qualifications being their education, their work experience, and or their skills. These unhealthy habits include drinking, smoking, unhealthy eating, and living a sedentary lifestyle. The fact is that people that are from lower social status are much more likely than those that are well off to engage in multiple of these unhealthy habits. Those people that are not as well off are up to 5 times as likely to engage in multiple of these habits than those that are well off. Over time, there has been improvement when it comes to these habits. Those of lower classes are engaging in multiple unhealthy habits, not as much as they used to. The upper class is just experiencing a greater improvement, which makes more of those that engage in multiple of these habits members of the lower class. A study by David Buck brought this to light. He found that there has been improvement when it comes to unhealthy habits. These improvements have been mainly among those people in the upper class. This has caused an increased gap in health between the rich and the poor. It is not so much that the poor are getting less healthy, the rich are just getting much, much healthier. I would say that for the most part, this would seem to stack up. It seems like when you go to the ghetto or a poorer area, you will see that more people are smoking than people that are growing their own vegetables. Also, healthy food costs a lot more than not as healthy food, like a Big Mac. So it only makes sense that a poorer person would buy the Big Mac over the salad. On the flip side, the rich people still drink alcohol. They drink tequila instead of Bud Light. Rich people definitely do not. Rich people still smoke, but not as much as those of lower social class. The main idea is that improvements of health are mainly happening among those that are a part of higher social class. The article darts out saying that those of higher social class are not engaging as much in multiple unhealthy habits. The same cannot be said for those that are of lower social class. Those of lower social class are sticking with their poor health habits more than those of higher social class. I would aim the issue more towards why those people of a lower social class are still for the most part clinging to these unhealthy habits. I would focus on how much certain unhealthy products cost versus the more healthy option. While these ethics cannot be enforced, in order for the lower class to be healthier, they need to be practiced. Higher social classes are improving, which is leaving those of lower social classes in the dust. I agree for the most part with the author. I do not think that the gap between the classes is as serious as the author makes it seem. The author makes it seem like the problem is the higher social classes rising up faster than the lower social classes are. The problem is that those of lower social class are not being able to abandon their unhealthy habits. This matters a lot because it's what keeps poor people poor and keeps them in not as good health. The author cites that the government needs to set targets regarding health for this to improve. The author also cites unemployment, fall in wages, and benefits as the main contributors to this problem. I think that for the most part, I think that for this problem to be fixed, we need to focus solely on those of low social status. The health of the higher class is taking care of itself. I think that the manufacture and sale of cigarettes should be illegal, sort of like prohibition. People still made their own alcohol, but the amount people drank decreased because it wasn't as available. With this law, the problem would not be totally fixed, but it would be vastly improved until a better idea or option is determined. Those that are poor would not have as easy access to cigarettes, which allow for many more people. to quit them. The aspect that I chose to respond to was that of definition. In the article that I chose for my interrogation, the author defined the problem as being the widening gap between lower social classes and higher social classes when it comes to the likelihood a person will engage in multiple unhealthy habits. The problem with defining the problem as the widening gap between the two classes is that if the upper class rescinds and starts picking up on more unhealthy habits, that would shorten the gap, which, according to the way that the problem has been defined, is a good thing. Obviously, that is not a good thing. The problem is that those people that are of low social class standing are unable to rise up and not engage in multiple of these unhealthy habits. The article that I chose to respond with is titled Socioeconomic Disparities in Health Behaviors, which focuses on the behaviors of those people that fall into a lower social class. The article uses data compiled by surveying people based on their education, job, income, whether or not they are not employed, and whether or not they rent or own their own house. The data looks into the percentages of these people by which category applies to them, whether they rent or own, or if they're employed or unemployed, and whether or not they drink alcohol, eat unhealthy, smoke, and or if they don't get enough exercise. The data seems to suggest that in every instance of data collected, the person with the better circumstance seemed to be less likely, and in some circumstances, much less likely to engage in unhealthy habits. The study set the ideal circumstances, be that high income, employed, high school graduate, at 1, and every circumstance down as the amount of times as likely a person is to engage in that particular unhealthy habit, given their qualifications. For example, a person with 0 to 11 years of education, that would be less than a high school diploma, is almost 5 times as likely as a person with a bachelor's degree to not exercise. The problem is not the widening gap in a person's likelihood to engage in multiple unhealthy habits based on their social class. The problem is that the lower social classes are not improving enough in this regard. The article's initial claim is that a person's lack of qualifications can cause them to engage in multiple unhealthy habits. A lack in qualifications pretty much translates into a person being less financially stable, thus in a lower social class. The question then needs to be, what is going on at the lower class level that makes a person and keeps that person engaging in multiple unhealthy habits? When you initially look at it, you can see that a person that gets addicted to alcohol or smoking, the response article that I found made the point that a person's social class circumstances may cause them to engage in these unhealthy habits. The article then goes on to show how these different unhealthy habits are connected. For example, for a person that exercises quite regularly, they're less inclined to smoke, and obviously they won't be as likely to be obese. On the other hand, a person that tries to quit smoking will go through withdrawal, which withdrawal can cause weight gain, which of course could be water weight as opposed to fat. So a person could move out of one category, but be put into another one, maybe to cope with the withdrawal. So maybe you're quitting smoking, so you take up alcohol, or vice versa. It would seem as though health for those of lower social class is a downward spiral once they engage in unhealthy habits. In conclusion, whether or not a person engages in unhealthy habits can be and is greatly influenced by that person's social class. The circumstance of a person's social class may not allow for a person to experience good health. In order for a person of low social class to be more in control of their health and not engage in multiple unhealthy habits, a person must tip the scale in their favor and get the proper education needed to get a good paying job. Those are my references.